Good evening, everybody. Grayless here, and welcome to Early Game Ship Design. I'm doing this video now because I realized that the early game tech tree is a lot more complicated than I actually have the time to record a quick video on, and I have gotten a lot of questions also about what to do for early game ship design and what to do for early game fighting. So to start off with, the early game I think of as the point where you're still primarily consolidating what you're doing. You're getting your main space infrastructure set up, you're building it up, you're maybe moving into a second mega nation, and outside of hyper-aggression strategies, what you're doing is primarily defending your own assets and maybe taking a few quick kills on alien ships in order to access the technology within. And what I wanted to go through here is how the meta for early game ship design works and why it is what it is. So let's start off with what you're fighting. If you look at what I have right now, you see a good example of a lot of the early game types of ships you're going to see. These are frigates, destroyers, you'll see some gunships coming down to low Earth orbit. They have relatively small weapons, they might have some point defense, but these are not super threatening ships. They barely have any armor. This ship has more tail armor than nose armor, which certainly is a choice, aliens. Oh, yeah, like, this might hurt. This 32 alien exotic armor, that might hurt. But, to go on with that, first we're going to talk about weapons. If you've watched a lot of Terra Invicta content, you know that missiles are king in early game. I'm going up to a larger hull to demonstrate why this is. That is not what I wanted to do, so... You know what, screw it, we're just going to go to a Titan. I'm just going to show you the whole thing. So, there's two types of weapons in the game. There's nose weapons and battery weapons. Missiles only exist in battery, which are these octagonal sections of the ship. Nose weapons, there are no missiles for that. There are some of us in the Terra Invicta community who believe that the better missiles should be changed into nose weapons, but that has not happened yet. So let's go over the difference. Battery weapons can fire in 360 degrees. Nose weapons have a firing arc that needs to be pointed in the direction you want them to actually hit. And what winds up happening when you look at damage values, I'm going to grab the Railgun Battery Mark III, and we're going to compare it to the Railgun Cannon Mark III and the Light Railgun Cannon Mark I. So our Light Rail Cannon Mark III, which is a nose weapon, does 17 damage, 17.6. Our battery does 28.2, and our Light Rail Cannon Mark III does 55.1. The easy way to think about this is a 4-slot battery weapon is worth roughly 1.5 slots of nose weapon. And this applies basically across the board. Lasers are the same way as kinetics. But missiles only exist in our battery format. That's a curious thing. So let's look at the humble crate missile bay. This is your start of game, no tech researched missile bay. And let's compare this to the Light Coilgun Battery Mark III, the strongest 1-slot kinetic battery in the game. Crate missile bay, 17 damage. It's explosive. At some point I'm going to get into damage types. That is not the time for this video, so we're going to look at raw damage values instead. Just know that the type of damage does matter. We're going to ignore that for now. So, 17.5 damage. Our end game coil gun, 8.7 damage. Our literal start of game unlock missile does more damage than our endgame coil gun. This is the reason why the early meta is missiles. And we're going to go over other stats. So let's do this fairly. Delta V is the max speed this missile has, which is 3.3 kips. Our coil gun battery does 6.3. Twice as fast. That's actually very meaningful. Like, I'm not claiming the Crate Missile Bay is a good weapon. I'm just giving you the comparison to a literal endgame weapon. Continuing on for relevant stats. Salvo, 6 shots over 6 seconds with 12 shots total. And there's an inter-salvo cooldown of 5 seconds, but like 6 shots over 6 seconds with a 5-second cooldown between salvos. 5 shots over 50 seconds with a 20-second cooldown. By its shots alone and how often it shoots, the Crate Missile Bay will be better at penetrating enemy PD than the light coil gun battery. There's more complex things. This goes twice as fast, but like, this is the sort of thing that I'm gesturing at for why missiles are so good. Also, targeting range, 600 kilometers. Targeting range, 800 kilometers. That 200 matters a lot. And then we get into the point where missiles are bad, which is magazine size 12. Magazine size 1500. The reason why you change over from missiles to kinetics in this game is mostly because you're starting to deal with enemy fleet sizes where your first salvo of missiles can't kill everything. This shoots 12 in total. If that isn't enough to kill, suddenly this slot is dead weight. This will keep shooting forever, basically. I have never run out of ammunition on something like this. So, we can see the comparison between our 0 tech level missile and our endgame tech level coil gun battery. One-slot weapons that aren't missiles are bad. They're just bad offensively. And this is partially a physics limitation and partially a game balance limitation. But this is the reason why, when you look at any early game guide, it says to use missiles. If we upgrade our missile to Copperheads, 46 damage, 8 damage, or 8.7 damage. 3.7 kips, still not that fast. 8 shots over 8 seconds with a 5-second cooldown and 16 shots total. 800 kilometers targeting distance. Again, this is why. Like, I could go through missile by missile, and the only thing that is maybe an exception is the Racer missile, which is not an offensive weapon. At all. And, like, that's the only one that even remotely compares, and it's far better at its job, which is point defense, than the light coil gun battery is. And again, endgame weapon. Earlier than this, even worse. So, let's go over our early game weapon strats. Alien ship types come primarily in 2 sorts. I'm going to call them flanker and wall. And when you go into a combat, you'll see what this is, where flankers are zipping around, who knows what, they're doing whatever they want, they're dodging all your shots. Wall ships are staying in formation and moving towards you at a set pace unless you start doing maneuvers that force them to accelerate or decelerate. Very early game, all we care about are flankers, which is the second reason why we use missiles. This 6.3 kips, maybe you could hit a flanker with it if you're really lucky, but I really wouldn't count on it. And in early game, that's not what you have. What you have is this railgun, which has 3.6 for a big-ass railgun. But you can't field that in early game. You have a 3.3, 3.0. You're not hitting anything with this. Or we can go over to our lasers, which, like, yeah, like you're still limited to 1 and 2 slot. That's too strong. Let's start our infrared arc laser. Oh, that's gonna hit but never deal damage. How damage works is more complicated for lasers, where they do a set amount of damage, but armor is more or less effective depending on how far away they are on the laser and that laser's stats. I'm going to turn this off because that's so bad we're not going to care about it. Let's do this one. So this laser does 5 damage. Okay, let's do something realistic. Let's do a gunship. Gunship just has a nose weapon. Let's do our starting infrared laser. Our starting infrared laser does 10 damage. Let's say the alien ship has 5 armor. At 600 kilometers, that armor is multiplied by 4.4, so it's 20 armor. We do no damage. At 400 kilometers, it's multiplied by 1.8, going up to 9. We do 1 point of damage. This requires us to close to 400 kilometers. 400 kilometers is knife fighting range in space. The aliens are going to try and stick to around 600 here, and our IR laser is going to do nothing because it's too weak. Green laser could do something. It's going to tickle them. But this is the reason why we go for missiles. We compare, our... let's do a full-ass laser corvette with green lasers because we're going to do IR lasers. We're going to do IR lasers because at the same research amount, this is what you're getting. This is going to tickle the enemy. And now let's put on a random hull weapon. The Viper Missile Bay. 39.8 damage, 10 damage. In order to really do anything, we're going to have to close to 400 kilometers. Well, it shoots at 800 and it's probably going to kill the enemy. This is why missiles. Now, to go into depth, missiles come in 2 primary types. There's a third type. It doesn't really matter because the game is bad at using it right now. Which is we have missiles and we have torpedoes. So we're going to grab Copperhead missiles and Athena torpedoes. Copperhead missiles, 46 damage, 3.7 kips, 8 shots over 8 seconds. Artemis torpedoes, 111 damage, 8 kips, targeting range 1,000 rather than 800, but cooldown 1 shot per 7 seconds. The difference between these two is the Artemis torpedo will go going fast enough to hit an enemy flanker, and the Copperhead missile might, maybe, if you're lucky. And this is the main difference where when you're looking at what the enemy is fielding, you use torpedoes against flankers, and you use missiles against large enemy ships that you need to overwhelm PD on. I understand that compared to how things actually work in the real world, this is a little bit backwards, but this is what we're living with. So, I picked these 2 for a reason because these are 2 of the main meta stats on torpedoes. Like, Artemis, 8 kips, 111 damage. Hermes, 4 kips, 400 damage. This is a worse torpedo because it won't hit a flanker, and it doesn't shoot fast enough to penetrate PD on a serious ship. Terra, a little bit better. Like, and Vulcan, I think, is actually a tier up. Yeah, mega damage, slower. And this is the main reason why you see the recommendations online to say Artemis torpedoes is they're the fastest early game torpedo, and 111 damage is going to kill an alien flanker. Like, this is going to kill it. You don't really need to care. It'll do it. So, early game, our nose weapons aren't strong enough to do anything, so we go for hull weapons. This is why our early game combat ship is the escort for our MC-1 ship, and the monitor for our MC-2 ship. They have the highest number of hull slots, and we fill them with missiles. So let's go over our early game escort. Our best one, we have 2 Artemis torpedoes. For our weapons, we have 0 nose weapons. And now our utility modules. We only have 2, and that means we grab the 2 that are most relevant. The first is the targeting computer. This is because the targeting computer subtracts from the enemy's chance to run ECM and turn our weapons off. Any ship that you want to do damage to the enemy needs a targeting computer. Hard rule, no exceptions. We also want a magazine. This is because the magazine gives us 50% more ammo. That turns our 9-shot into a 13-shot, I think. I'm not sure if it's 13 or 14 by rounding. Massively beneficial for missiles more than anything else. There's all these other things, we don't care. Radiators. Starter game radiators are these 2. Your goal is to minimize the tons per gigawatt waste heat. These 2 are both pretty bad. Early game, I recommend going for nanotube. You'll eventually upgrade to these other radiators that you see going up the scale. Nanotube is the first one that I think is seriously worth the RP points to actually go for. And eventually you'll get Tim Droplet, which is better, but it'll take some time to get there. And there's a battery. We go for the lightest battery we can because it doesn't matter. Honestly, I researched the saltwater battery eventually just to be a little bit better. I'm not honestly sure it's worth it. Just sticking with lithium ions probably fine. And then armor. You see that 115 damage. Each point of armor reduces the amount of damage you take. For most of the game, just because of how the armor formula works and damage formula works, you only care about enemy lasers. And there's a few specific breakpoints for where laser damage matters. In the early game, I mostly like going for 15. 15-1-1. 0 is a you really know what you're doing play. Don't do 0 unless you really know what you're doing. And that's because the nose of our ship is going to be pointed towards the enemy. So we armor the nose more than anything else. There are strategies when you know how to pilot ships to armor your tail instead of your nose because you're running away. Go for that once you're more comfortable with the game. So 15-1-1 is my basic suggestion for like your first ships that aren't suicidal and just gonna die. Even for suicidal ships, you go 8-0-0 so they have a chance to kill the enemy before the enemy kills them. Because you need to actually have any ships survive the fight to get the rewards from beating the aliens. So 15-1-1. And now we get to the most complicated part of ship design, which is your drive, which have a tremendous list, and your power plant. In general, in the game, there are 2 roles for combat ships. There are orbital defense, and there's attack ships. We're going to go for orbital defense first because I think it's the most relevant one, the one with the most complexity in what you're doing. The goal of an orbital defense ship is to stop your stations in orbit from dying. And primarily, we're going to care about Earth orbit for this. So let's look at Earth orbit. One nice thing that the ship designer has is the transfer planner. This lets you see what is going on with your ship. We need to have any drive to look at the transfer planner. So I'm going to show obsolete, lag my game for a bit, and pick one of the start of game drives. We have fuel cell, and we have chemical rockets, baby. This is terrible. So let's take a look. Looking at our transfer planner, what we want to do is, when the aliens arrive in orbit, get to what they're attacking before they do. So we're going to go around our stations in low Earth orbit 1. So going from Lafayette to Alexander. This ship will take 2 hours. Going to Don Henrique, 1.8 hours. 1.6 for Stonehenge. Fuji for 3.7. Fitzroy 6. Tamaran 7. Like, this is because these stations are in orbit. This one is likely on the opposite side of Earth. This is a problem because 6 hours is not enough time. Like, the aliens will get there before you. This is why I like building my main shipyard where my ships idle in medium Earth orbit to go down to low Earth orbit. If you look at the alien ships, their cruise velocity in early game is 50 milligs. This means it'll take them about 1.5 hours to get to any station in low Earth orbit that's farther away from exactly where they land. And this is the value I look at when I'm evaluating early game drives and trying to design ships. So our start of game Apex solid rocket. We can get to 1.5 hour interception with far too much fuel. Like, this is not a ship you use. And this is why you don't really build defensive ships until you have better than the start of game rockets to actually do anything with. So I've obsoleted them. We're getting rid of them. I'm going to show you like a realistic ship you might actually build. So, start of game. We have solid core fission. The main drive in solid core fission that like you might actually run with, advanced Nerva is one of them. If you look at this can get from medium Earth orbit to low Earth orbit in 0.57 hours. This may not save your first station in low Earth orbit. It would probably save your second station. The problem is, because of how low its cruise delta V is, this is a one-way trip. It will need to refuel in low Earth orbit. And that's why, like, the advanced Cermet Nerva is advanced Nerva and advanced Cermet Nerva are two of the drives that, like, you could start using for this purpose. They're not good for this. You're going to be spending more fuel than you want to. Look at the fuel cost of 208 versus every other cost for this ship. You don't want to be doing this, but you can. And if you followed an earlier version of the game, you might have heard about the advanced pulsar drive. This, for a long time, was the meta drive before it was nerfed. And if you look at these stats, you can see why. With 10 tanks, this can push our Wakizashi-class escort fast enough to likely get there before the aliens do. It's not going to push much more than that, but it will do that. And this is where we're going to go into drive stats. Drive stats are a mess, especially if you don't know advanced mathematics. This is because they primarily operate on a log scale and also have an additional multiplier. So, exhaust velocity. The easiest way to think about this is exhaust velocity is your fuel efficiency. You've probably driven a car. What's the difference between a car that gets 10 miles per gallon and a car that gets 30 miles per gallon to the same amount of tank? That's what your exhaust velocity is. It will tell you how efficiently you can spend your fuel. And there's more complications about this for space travel, but if you think about it that way, it's the easy way to do it. And a rating of 6 is twice as good as a rating of 5. A rating of 7 is 4 times as good as a rating of 5. And we'll see this when we go over other aspects. Meanwhile, thrust. This is your 0 to 60. This is how fast can you change how quickly you're moving. So exhaust velocity, how much fuel we have, thrust, what's our best acceleration, how fast can we get up to that speed. It also works on a log 2 scale, so 16 is like half the speed of 17. Lastly, drives have this combat thrust multiplier. This is a thing that is programmed into the game to make drives usable in combat. If you look at our cruise acceleration versus our combat acceleration, 5x, 5 times as high. This is where there's complicated math around interceptions, how fast you can move in combat, and all of that. For early game, we're only going to really be looking at cruise acceleration and cruise delta V. So as you see, and the last bit for ships, wet mass. Every fuel tank costs you 100 tons of your mass. It's not a great plan to have more than 30% of your mass be fuel. You really don't want more than 50% of your mass being fuel. Rough guideline in early game, so 2,000 tons for our escort. That means that we don't want more than 600 tons of fuel. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I generally say, for your early game ships, don't like MC1 ships, don't use more than 5 tanks. If you're using more than 5 tanks, you need to consider whether or not you ought to be doing this. For the advanced pulsar drive, this is technically within bounds. Again, this was the meta drive for a long time. It's still pretty good, but it has its limitations. Moving up, though. Let's see. So, Advanced Servant Nerva, which is another drive that is reasonably recommended. This is going to get you there in time. And this 0.38 hours is very relevant because of a different type of transfer, which is low Earth orbit 1 to low Earth orbit 2. Early game alien ships will make that transfer in 0.15 hours. So if an alien ship comes in and you're trying to beat it there, you need to beat 0.15 hours. Advanced Servant Nerva cannot do that. Where's Pulsar? There's Pulsar. Pulsar cannot do that. And this is where a lot of the drives that are super meta wind up running into problems. So let's move on from Solid Core. Solid Core is the start of you can do drives. Next up is Gas Core, which are the Multi-Core, which are Lars, Teardrop, Fission Spinner, and Pegasus. Pegasus is the main drive you're usually looking at in Molten Core. You go really fast with Pegasus, but there are still limits to it, and it's heavy. Like, you can run Pegasus for a while, and there are times when you use it, but we see medium Earth orbit to low Earth orbit, it can get you there in time. The bigger thing is this gets you 4G combat acceleration. This is the peak combat acceleration, because if you go above this, your pilots are going to pass out. This is the drive you want if you want to force fights with the aliens that they don't want. But it will also get your escort into from medium Earth orbit to low Earth orbit 1 fast enough to beat the aliens there. Let's keep going on. Next up, we're going to go to Gas Core, which has a large number of drives, including the burner drive. If you follow Terra Invicta content at all, you will know this drive is the recommended meta pick drive. And you can see why. Look at that transfer with literally 1 tank. The burner drive is the first drive in the game that has a very good balance of exhaust velocity and thrust. Earlier drives are either efficient or fast, not both. Burner can get you from medium Earth orbit to low Earth orbit fast enough to beat the aliens to a good number of things that will get you there on very few tanks in an escort. Let's go up to a monitor. Now, with a monitor, we have enough slots to start caring about more than just killing the enemy. I usually like running 3 sets of missiles and 1 40mm autocannon on a monitor. The 40mm autocannon is a point defense weapon. This is why it has the defense tag. This shoots down enemy kinetic weapons that are trying to hit your ship. It doesn't help any other ships in your fleet, but it keeps the ship it's on pretty safe. And for what it does, it is the best in class for that. It's also unlocked at the beginning of game. Now, when you put a 40mm on something, you want to go down to here and see it's in Guardian mode. This means it will try shooting enemy ships. We don't want that. We want to, from Guardian mode, left-click to turn it into defense mode. Now it will only shoot at things that are trying to hit your ship. This is because it does piddling damage. 1 damage. There are ways to make this useful. That's a different video. Just know that a 40mm, you put it on defense mode, and you're good. Now, a monitor, we put it on our targeting computer. We have 2 utility slots. Let's get even more missiles. The Escort for 1MC shoots 2 bays of missiles at a time, and will have, because of magazines, it would have 9 per bay. I just realized that updated. These will shoot 3 at a time and have 12 per bay. That's a lot better. Going into radiators, we then go nanotube, same thing, yada, yada, yada. We grab our... This is actually a good time to talk about armor. Armor is basically a strict upgrade, where the more expensive the armor is, the better it is, because that armor is lighter. We go from our start of game unlocks to composite, which is the earliest armor you maybe ever want to put on your ship, to foamed metal, which is lighter again and does better, to nanotube. For a new player, nanotube is the first armor I would seriously put on your ships. You really want adamantine, but nanotube can get you going. There are also exotic and hybrid armors. These are better. They're too expensive to be worth putting on any serious ship. So, again, 15-1-1, 3 missiles, 1 40mm autocannon, a targeting computer, 2 magazines. Let's go see how Burner does. We increase our number of drives, and... Oh, this is a problem. We can't move fast enough to get there before the aliens. And this is something that, if you go blindly for meta strats, will bite you in the ass. Because if you're fitting out entirely burner monitors, they cannot beat the aliens to any of the stations you want to defend. The aliens will just bounce from station to station, killing them. And if the cooldown is long enough on how long it takes to kill them, your burner monitors will eventually get there, but you can't guarantee you get there first. And this is why I say, the burner drive is not a bad drive. It's a very good drive. But when you increase the size of your ship, it doesn't have enough cruise acceleration to actually get there before the aliens. And the main thing you're looking for here is the aliens have 50 millig's of cruise acceleration. So let's look at other gas core drives. Let's look at Light Bulb. Light Bulb is pretty fast. Medium Earth orbit to low Earth orbit. We can make that in 0.89 hours. We could even give us 20 fuel tanks and make that in 1 hour and maybe get back up to medium Earth orbit afterwards. If you just go for your pure meta strat, like you look at this compared to the burner. So that's that. This is this. Light Bulb has 4.2 exhaust velocity. Burner has 6.1. Burner is 4 times as efficient. We can see that and how little our cruise delta V is. Light Bulb is at 17.9. I'm going to round it to 18. Burner's at 13.4. Now, Burner is open cycle, which means it is lighter on the ship because it doesn't have to vent heat to the radiator, where Light Bulb is closed cycle, which means it does. This is another important stat on your drive. and also, like, they're both 85% power efficiency, but you compare the two, and you can see how, for the purpose of beating the aliens in orbital defense, light bulb's actually better. If we go back to our advanced... wait, no, where's the Sermant Nerva? Or advanced Kermit Nerva. This, at very high expense, can push a monitor fast enough to get to low Earth orbit, but it's not getting back. Let's go over to our Pegasus drive. Oh, again, like, it's very expensive, but you can beat them there, and, like, you're gonna bankrupt yourself on fuel if you do this, but it'll work. You can get there faster than 1.5 hours. And that's the difference between losing one station to the aliens and losing two stations to the aliens. Not always, like, sometimes they land right on the station you want to and you cannot get there fast enough, but this transfer is a big thing I think about with my early game orbital defense. And that's where we get to my baby, the Orion drive. I love the Orion drive. It's probably one of my favorite drives in the game because, like, it's getting you there fast enough. But here's the big thing with the Orion drive. Look at its propellant cost per tank. 6.5 metals, 3 nobles, and 0.5 fissiles. Those are expensive. Burner? That's mostly water. And this is the reason why figuring out what drive you want to use is very complicated. The generalized listing for early game orbital defense drives, just going through what people have found, what winds up working. There's a long thread on this on the Discord. But Advanced Sermant Nerva, which I just showed you, there is also the Pebble to Particle drive, which people talk about. I haven't really tested that one myself much. I usually don't do this. Like, this is usually even earlier than I, who like doing hyper early aggression, is willing to do, like, research into drives and spending on drives rather than spending on murder, like, improving my infrastructure so I can murder things harder later. So yeah, let's look at this particle drive. Yeah, like, this is fast enough. It's gonna bankrupt you on fuel, but it's fast enough. And then, you know, going into Molten Core, we wind up having Teardrop Drive, Fission Spinner Drive, Pegasus Drive. All these are solid for what they're supposed to be doing. Which one do you want to use? Well, it depends on what you're trying to do. But, like, we go into this with 20 tanks. It gets you there fast enough. We go to its younger brother. Can't quite do it. Like, Lars needs upgrades. Teardrop can do it. Fission Spinner can do it. It can even get you there, like, almost fast enough to deal with a much faster intro. Like, this is... Look at this. That's great. You're getting there in no time at all. Go to Pegasus, the problem is it massively increases the weight of your ship. And that's where it's tricky. Where, like, you go up here, now we're on intercept time. Increase the number of nozzles, it's bad. And this is one of the things that makes drives really complex, is not just what drive do you use, how many drives do you use. Pegasus, don't use more than one. Like, this is a very functional ship for most purposes in early game defense. You just need a place to refuel it. And then, like, continuing on, like, there's a lot of things around this. If you want to go into gas core drives, like Super Vortex, look at that. That's fantastic amounts of speed. And it just gets better when you go up. Again, expensive. Like, go down to fewer nozzles. Not fast enough. Move it up. Hey! We're gravy. We're doing good work. And then, separately, if you want to early game, there are, instead of the fast drives, there are the efficient drives. These are the things you use to go to the asteroid belt. Maybe you want to fight the aliens there. Maybe you want to send a colony ship to Mercury. The starting exhaust velocity to really look at those is 6. You want better. So we're going to go our medium Earth orbit station to Mercury. Let's go to low Mercury orbit. Go back to our ship designer. We need 26 kips. This is just a factor of it's deep in a gravity well. Kind of sucks to get deep in a gravity well. 40 weeks. 27 weeks. Not going to get much better than that in the ion drive. Let's upgrade from ion, though, to grid. Grid is your bread and butter early game long distance drive. Like, this gets you to Mercury with barely any fuel cost. 9 weeks. You really can't argue with that. You're not going to beat the aliens to anything in low Earth orbit using the grid drive. But you might be able to hit them in deep space. Also in this category are the Vasimir drive. This one is... its benefit is it's insanely cheap. It's not very good, but it's insanely cheap. Advanced Vasimir is better, more expensive. Like, it's worse than Grid. Not all that much. Like, it's definitely worse. And then going up further, there's the Helicon drive, which is the first, what I would call, very good long-range drive in the game. This, when you look at it... actually, let me get a better power plant. This will get you to Mercury in 6 weeks. How long does it take to get you to Jupiter? Oh, only 29 weeks. And then we can add or remove fuel tanks as we want to make that better or worse. Like, about 20 weeks to get to Jupiter. That's about as good as you're going to get for a very long time in the game. And there's other drives in long range, but let's go back to that one that I was talking about before, burner. 6 nozzles. Well, she's efficient enough to get us to Jupiter in 30 weeks, and if we really want to break the bank, less than 20. Like, I don't recommend doing this, but you can. And much more importantly, let's say we don't want to get to there. Let's say we want to get to Ceres, because the aliens are in the asteroids and causing some problems, or maybe the servants are in the asteroids and causing some problems. That's a pretty good time. And this is one of the benefits of burner is actually efficient. You might get outrun in low Earth orbit if you go for too large a ship. And you're not able to, like, get to the station before the aliens blow it up. But it will also push these ships out to Ceres. And now let's get to the end of early game. You've done your missile warfare doctrine. Maybe you have advanced missile warfare doctrine, which means you've gone from Artemis torpedoes to Athena torpedoes. Athena versus Artemis. This is just a direct upgrade. It's 3 times as much damage. It's 50% faster. It's shooting the same number of things. This is the main direct upgrade. But at the time you're doing this, you might start seeing large enemy ships. And if you're willing to micro, this is where you'll start doing things like, where are they? Running lance heads. Lance heads are fantastic for destroying large enemy ships. They shoot a ton of missiles. They have a huge magazine capacity. Like, you do something like, well, that's Vulcans. Where are you? You do something like this, that's going to wreck a big enemy ship. Like, it's going to overwhelm its PD. It's going to go in and destroy systems. you're going to be happy. But these aren't going to hit flankers. And if you really want to, you can actually play the entire game with ever-increasingly complicated missile designs. It requires a lot of micro, and I don't like it, so I don't do that. But you absolutely can. Meta strategy is to go from Athena torpedoes to Artemis torpedoes, because if you mass enough monitors, these will get through PD and also wreck big ships. 336, that's a big number. That's gonna kill even an alien mothership with 150 armor pretty fast. You just gotta get through the point defense. But you've gone through your early game. You want to start building bigger and better hulls. So let's talk about this. First off, the cruiser. This is not a combat hull. You use this hull because of its utility slots. The cruiser an upgrade to the frigate, which has terrible weapons but great utility. Let's talk about the battle cruiser and the battleship. The battle cruiser is all about that nose weapon. And if you remember what I said about nose versus battery weapons, the best battery weapon, which takes 4 slots, is 1.5 nose weapons. Let us compare the green arc laser cannon 3-slot to the green arc laser cannon 2-slot. Our 3-slot does 17 damage, and at 600 kilometers is 30% armor pen. Or, armor is worth 30%. Our 2-slot is 15 damage, and at that same distance, it is 57%. The 3-slot is worth more than 2 slots of a nose laser. And this is the reason why, for offensive lasers, what you want more than anything else is the single largest nose slot laser you can possibly find. And you remember, with our 40mm, we didn't want it in Guardian mode because it would shoot at enemy ships when we wanted to defend us. Offensive lasers are the opposite. We don't want them in Guardian mode because we want them to kill the enemy rather than shooting down individual kinetic rounds. So you set your nose laser to attack mode. Green arc nose lasers are the first recommended nose laser to actually use. Let's go through it. Every ship means it's dedicated 40mm. We could go for a point defense arc laser. This can defend your entire fleet, but it's not great at it. What we'd really rather do at this stage is do a point defense ion battery, because this will wreck enemy missiles with how fast it shoots and help the entire fleet, whereas this will protect yourself. For utility modules, we now care about heat sinks. As soon as you are using anything besides lasers and guns, of which a 40mm counts, a railgun, a coil gun do not. You need a heatsink. This is because if your radiator gets shot out, these weapons cannot fire. The heatsink will keep you fighting longer. This is an offensive ship. We need a targeting computer. This is a laser. 350 megajoules. 17 damage. We want to use as many laser engines as are feasible to boost the damage of our laser. This will go from 350 to 370. That will both improve its armor pen and improve its raw damage. Again, nanotube. I'm getting into battery. Let's do armor first. Let's say we're still at nanotube. The main thresholds I recommend for nose on armor are 15, 30, 60, 80, and 160, depending on where you are in your game. 15 is for hyper early game. 30 is for early game where you want your ships to survive. 60 is the first amount of armor that I recommend on a ship that might have to fight for a long period of time. And we're still doing very low side and rear armor because we're on nanotube. For a realistic design on this ship, I would actually recommend doing 4 side armor because you're not going to kill enemy flankers before they have a chance to flank. So this is what I think of as your I'm upgrading to battleships and battlecruisers tier. Remember those figures we talked about for low Earth orbit transfers. Let's go look at how our poor burner drive compares. You can see this yellow warning. That yellow warning is not very good. I'm going to go back to our medium Earth orbit to low Earth orbit in a random place. Ooh, you can already see the problem here. 9.8 hours. That's not going to do it. And this is the reason why you need to upgrade your drives. So, burner drive, that's going to be a dead station. This ship cannot catch the aliens. Maybe, if you're lucky and they're lazy, they'll sit there idling for a few hours and it will finally catch up to them. But by itself, it won't. Let's check Orion. Hey! This is why I love the Orion drive. And the reason why it's expensive to fuel. You need to be careful with it. But I love this, and it's why I use this more than most other drives. This will get you there, even on this heavy of a hull. But let's look at our light bulb. This was in the same tier as burner. This is still too slow. We need more cruise thrust. So 15.3, not enough. Let's look around at what else we got. Worse. Also worse. That one's worse. Is 15.6 enough? Super vortex. Not really. Regular vortex is 15. Unfortunately, we get slower by adding tanks faster than we can make it to the enemy. I removed the battery by accident. Let's check our Pegasus. Well, it's really pricey. Like, you shouldn't do this, but you can. And this is the strength of the Pegasus drive, and that ludicrously high 22 thrust rating. Now, there are modules that can boost things. So we're going to remove a laser engine, and we're going to go find a utility module called the muon spiker. This will increase our thrust. That's fusion drive, sorry. Neutronium spiker. This will improve our thrust. Is that the only one? Let me just double check. Yeah, that's the one. Let's see if we can make this work with something else. So, burner, no way. Let's check light bulb. Can light bulb pull this off? Nope. No, it cannot. And this is the point where you really want to have better drives. Or, drop your armor down. Make your ship lighter. It's a risk. The ship might die. But now we're fast enough to actually beat the aliens to where we need to be. Still not fast enough on burner. And Orion can't use that, but it was already fast enough before it. And this is the really complicated part of ship design, is you need to design a ship for a particular purpose. When you're moving up to battle cruisers and battleships and even higher levels of hull, you really need your drive tech to keep up. So let's go up to stronger fission drives. We're now in advanced fission systems. We need terawatt reactors to research this. This is the Firestar drive. That's fast enough. That'll do. We can make that work. That's perfect. That's fantastic. But we're now out of early game. Because this drive costs so much more to get than any of the previous drives we mentioned. Or we have my baby, the H Orion. I absolutely adore this. It can make real big ships go pretty fast. It'll get you there in enough time to intercept the second one, as you can see here. Or like advanced mini-mag. Not quite fast enough. Mini-mag, nope. There's a lot of drives in this game. And that's the big thing to look at is, and I wish there was a preview for ship design to look at what you're doing with a drive before you research the drive. But you can get a rough idea by looking at thrust and exhaust velocity compared to a drive that you have that is the same like open or closed cycle and power use efficiency. If we're going kinetic, so last thing though, this is our best laser ship. What if we want kinetics? So this is where the difference between railguns and coil guns matters a lot. Railguns, you really don't want to use before Mark III, in the same way you don't want to use lasers before green arc lasers. They're just really bad before then. Rail cannon Mark III, this can kill things. It's fast enough to hit, it does a good amount of damage. The problem is kinetics need to overwhelm enemy PD. And this by itself is going to overwhelm nothing. Then there's coil guns. The rail cannon Mark III is equivalent to a coil gun 1.5. So coil gun 1 is worse, coil gun 2 is better. In coil guns, though, you have something called siege coilers. The big thing here is is it in this? No. So siege coilers fire a huge round at relatively low velocity. This takes multiple shots of alien PD to kill. You can overwhelm alien PD entirely with siege coilers. It's really hard to overwhelm alien PD entirely with railgun rounds. And you also have like regular coil gun rounds that are heavy. These are as good as railgun rounds. Probably don't use them. Battle cruisers you really want to be using, siege coilers, and green arc lasers are better. Let's go over to the battleship. People hate on the battleship as not being good. If you're going all the way up to the end of the game in battle cruisers, this is true. This is because hull weapons are usually worse than nose weapons. There is, however, one thing that hull weapons can be very good for, and that's overwhelming PD. And also doing point defense yourself. This design is something I've tested a fair bit. This is 2 railgun batteries Mark III and 1 rail cannon Mark III. Along with an autocannon in defense mode. And our ion defense. This will outperform a rail battle cruiser of the same level because you have 3 guns firing rather than 1. Again, siege coilers, which are limited to 3 and 4 slot nose cannons, are better. Those will do so much better than this, even with the coil gun equivalent. But when we're talking about early game ships, this winds up being rather substantially better. And we build it the same way. And we even have space for modules that are not simply improving our damage. Maybe we get an ECM. Maybe we want to grab a salvage bay to increase our loot. Maybe we want a flagship a flag bridge to reduce the MC cost of what else is going on. And similarly, we're going to go 61-1. And the battleship is heavier than the battlecruiser. It also takes a little bit longer to build due to how ship build takes. Like how different things work. And like you can see this here, it's slower. It can't get there fast enough with the light bulb drive where our battlecruiser could. This is the big problem the battleship has, is it is a heavier ship. Now, when you go up to heavier ship class fleet doctrine, you usually have offensive ships and defensive ships. The thing the battleship is actually very good at is being a defensive ship. Remember how I mentioned it's relatively better for, like, batteries and hull weapons are not good on offense. They're a lot better on defense. Like, the early game, I am building a defensive ship. It's going to be a battleship. We have this laser cannon, so it can do anything offensively. It has its 40mm. because it needs to protect itself. But now we want to defend our allies. We had 2 arc laser turrets to deal with kinetics at a distance, and 3 to point defense ion batteries. A battle cruiser, for the same MC cost, only has 2 defense slots. A battleship has 6. So while the battle cruiser is 2 to 3 times as good on offense, the battleship is 3 times as good on defense. And this is the main thing that you wind up trying to build into your battleships when you're making use of them at this tier. A monitor can do something similar, where the battleship has any offensive pressure. A defensive monitor, which is easier to get up to speed, does something like 3-point defense ion batteries and 1 40mm. You put this in with your battle cruisers, they're proof against enemy missiles, and that 40mm should keep them themselves safe against enemy kinetics. And honestly, that's sort of it for the early game ship guide. Any hulls larger than this is solidly in mid-game. That drive I showed you at the end, the Firestar drive, Fission Lantern, and the H. Orion drive, those are also mid-game drives, not early-game drives. I hope this was helpful to people, and I hope it helps you better fight against the aliens. Oh, sorry. Last thing. How many ships to field? When you're running missiles, my usual answer is 2 monitors per 3 light alien ships, and 1 monitor per heavy alien ship. When you're up to battle cruisers, I usually try and build a fleet with a 3 kinetic battle cruisers to 4 laser battle cruisers to 2 point defense ship ratio. I find this works pretty well for the types of things you're going to be fighting, but a lot of that depends on how many ships are allowed in a fight. In our settings menu in gameplay, we can see max ships allowed in combat. The min ships per side in combat is 1/3 of this. So if you're playing on default settings, you want to define your fleet based off the assumption you are getting 10 ships. And you need those ships to be as good as they possibly can be for that amount. And under default settings, this is where missile ships fall off. You get 10 ships. The enemy is coming. Let's say you have a fleet of 20 ships and the enemy comes at you with a fleet of 60. You get 10 ships to their 30. 10 ships to their 20. That's a really bad ratio. They have 40 in reserve, you have 20 in reserve. They're outnumbering you 2 to 1. Their point defense is going to shoot down your missiles. And this is why, as you go from early game to mid game, you swap over from missile monitors to heavier and heavier hulls. Because you're limited by the number of ships per fight, not the amount of MC per fight. A battleship will bring many more weapons to bear than a monitor will. A battle cruiser will be much more effective than a monitor, MC point to MC point. And if you want to keep up on missiles, battleships are where you can start doing some fun things with missiles. I'm going to show you this as like an off-meta build. You do a nose laser cannon to kill things. You do your 40mm for your own protection. And then you fill this battleship with lance heads. And this battleship flies forward. You need a heatsink here because you have a nose laser. You need your targeting computer. And then you do magazines. And then this battleship flies forward and destroys enemy wall ships with its missile bays. You have focus fired on those wall ships. And once they're dead, you turn all of your green arc laser cannons to shoot straight at whatever flankers are still left alive, and it's glorious. And you can't actually run it in early game because your drives aren't good enough. Like, let me show you this without adamantine armor. This is a beautiful ship that unfortunately cannot intercept for squat. Let's run Pegasus. So, like, this, with one Pegasus drive, and only one, you can actually intercept. It's, like, you can do this. It's an off-meta pick, but I love it. It's beautiful and stupid, and so much fun. You run it with Orion, it can actually get where the aliens are in time. It's expensive, but you can actually beat them there. And, like, this is my stupid boy who I love. I love doing weird ship designs that are off meta, and this is one of the reasons why I'm showing this off, is because this can carry you for a long time so long as you can afford to fuel it. But it requires you to think about not what does meta say, but what are my needs, and what am I building in order to meet my needs. And for that, I will ask you all, think about your needs, have some fun designing ships. The last thing is, if you save this design, and you want to compare it to what you're doing, you can go out to the main menu. And this isn't in-game right now, and I think it's a travesty that it isn't in-game. But you can go into skirmish mode, and it will load in all of your designs, and it will load in the default alien designs and the alien designs you have in your game for you to test how your designs work against whatever the aliens are doing. So skirmish mode, add player ships, scroll all the way down, import from save. I don't think I actually have any real designs saved in my cheaty designer save. Whoopsies. But we go in here, we can go like, I want to face like this alien battleship with my PD brick, or my LP brick class Titan. And just test out whether or not your ship designs work against whatever the aliens might throw at you. I hope this video was helpful. Go kill some A's, guys. Have a good night.